Hello, my name's Tom Cahill. It's Friday, the 1st of November 2019. This video is going to specifically focus on, it's going to be named as a full-purpose video for the purpose of exposing this guy called Shaun Attwood. Shaun is spelled S-H-A-U-N, Attwood, A-T-T-W-O-O-D, Shaun Attwood, right? This guy had a YouTube channel for a while. Now, his story is his dad set it up when he was in prison in America, in Arizona, right? So it doesn't correspond to his actual time when he would have been out of prison, and it wasn't there before he went into prison, if we believe his bullshit about being in prison. Now, it's possible he was in prison, but I don't think he was in prison. I really don't. He comes across a bit like a, when I say like I wouldn't say like necessarily a homosexual, but he comes across someone who's like a lot of like tittering little sarcastic little weasel. Yet at the same time, he's quite intelligent. He's quite charming. Yeah, so he's not like, his character's not like, he's not like a man's man. Yeah, and the thing is, if he's actually got on okay in prison, in a very nasty prison in America, and he's in on a high security because of the crimes he's done, you know, like being an ecstasy kingpin's his story, he would have to be able to get along with sort of men's men. Do you know what I mean? Even if he wasn't particularly good at fighting and stuff, he couldn't be like tittering away like a little girl every time he says something which makes him laugh. You know what I mean? That wouldn't really, you know, he could be joking and messing around all the time, but not in the way he does now. Right, so Attwood's story. I was suspicious of him for day one because there was something a little bit too just generally COINTELPRO-like about him. And I didn't believe the bullshit about him being an ecstasy kingpin, the head of a big organisation, therefore, you know, they're all trying to get you. And he's saying, well, they pulled in like 100 or so of my, or 90 or something of my, network, and then 5 or so of them grasped, but most of them didn't grasp. In fact, no, he says it the other way around. He says that nobody basically grasped him, apart from like maybe 5 people. Now, the whole point is, you don't need loads and loads of people. It's not fucking voting for the president, yeah? One person can say you've done it, and if they can sort of somehow piece together some hodgepodge to say you've done it, they can, that might be enough to convict you. So there could be 99.9% of them not mentioning you. Doesn't mean anything, but he tries to trick people. It's a bit like Brian Gerrish-esque. He'll say like, Holly Gregg got a compensation payout. Now, I'm not saying she did or she didn't. She may well have not. He could have just made it up because it'd be impossible to check, I'd imagine. She got a compensation payout, and yet that they didn't charge anyone. Well, lots of people get compensation payouts from criminal injuries. The criminal injuries, compensation authority or compensation board. Because, you know, they've got their head smashed in and their wallet was stolen. Well, it's quite obvious what's happened to them. You know, they could have smashed their head in and knocked themselves out and thrown their wallet in a bin or something, but they probably haven't. So, you know, the chances are they have actually been robbed. You don't actually have to charge anyone. So it's the same with this. So he says things which don't make sense. So to be clear, what I'm saying here is, he's talking like, oh, no, nobody really grassed. Oh, well, 1 or 2 people grassed us up. Well, it doesn't. It only takes 1 or 2 people to grass you up, yeah? Now, and he's saying, I never cooperated. Oh, no, not with the police. No. I wouldn't snitch on anybody, as he calls it, snitch, because he's been living in America, and that's what they call grassing, right? Yeah? So, that doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever, right? It's just complete lies. He had Jamie Morgan Kane on. Was this guy who was saying he was in some kind of special forces and he came from the Isle of Man and he could only speak Irish because his Irish granny was Irish and she lived on the Isle of Man and they only spoke Irish. So when he came to America, English wasn't even his first language. For a start off, that's bullshit because in the Isle of Man they speak English or Manx Gaelic, which is a different type of Gaelic to Irish Gaelic. Yeah, so they don't speak. So he's just talking shit. It's complete, and everything else he said was complete nonsense. Like, this guy I think was 5'5". Now, I'm not much taller, but the point is this guy was just a big fat lard ass. He had these fucking enormous, great big arms that had these big, disgusting mess tattoos all over them. They weren't good tattoos. And he had this kind of like handlebar sort of like mustache. You know, the kind of thing that a complete twat would have on their face. Now, if he's a really cool looking dude, who was like in shape and looked like a bit of a hard man, you get away with it. But he's not one of those type of people. He doesn't look like one of those type of people. He looks like a fucking liar who would come into the pub, start talking to you, and you'd do anything to get away from him. Yeah? And anybody thought, oh, there's a bit of space over there. I'll go and put my pint down there. I'll probably get served quicker. You'd realise why there was a big space there. Anyway, so his other load of lies, which was very obvious, this is just stuff that you can look up really, really easily, yeah? Was that this Jamie Morgan Caine bullshitter, right? He was clearly a bullshitter. There's just no way anyone with any kind of normal faculty would believe anything he says, right? He was on the show, but he'd mentioned being in the military prior to his bullshit about how he got sent to prison and he hadn't done anything. And he was in there for 34 years or something. The guy's just a complete bellend who's not likeable at all. So he's never going to, once he's in the system, he's just such an idiot. They're just going to keep him in there for ages. I mean, it wouldn't even surprise me he hadn't even been in prison, but it really doesn't matter. He's just a sad case. He's a liar. He's like this guy at university called Penfold, who would always lie about different stuff. He just could not stop lying. And he would always be pretending that he'd shagged this woman or that woman. And it'd just be like one day, for instance, somebody said something like, he said he did mention something about one of his stories. This girl, she burst out crying. She wanted to kill herself. She was so disgusted. Yeah, he was causing all sorts of trouble all the time. And then one time, he came into class. He wasn't in my class, but other people told me. I'm reliably informed. He started saying that he reckons that the child support age, the CSA were after him. they've been putting a big operation on him, and no one could work out how old he was because he kind of sort of looked. You couldn't tell whether he was just had some kind of aging disease or whether he was actually old and just pretending. Yeah, he's a weirdo. But anyway, he's just like a complete liar. Lying, constantly lying, never stopped lying. And however much people would take the piss out of it in good humour, but he still never got the message. He just couldn't stop lying. So, for instance, in one of the lectures, I remember this guy called Carl was shouting, "Hey, Dad!" He was calling him Dad because he couldn't work out how old he was, and he was trying to make out that maybe he was his dad because he doesn't have anything to do with his dad, and maybe he was his dad. It was fucking hilarious, and the thing is, he never really dropped it. But you see, this is the thing. This is why this isn't funny. It's because this Attwood is meant to be standing up since he's left prison in America, right? For people who have been warehoused in prison for the two main thrusts of it, right, are meant to be disabled people, mentally disabled people who are warehoused in there, and they're just kept in there, put on loads of drugs. And he says the guards are even killing them, yeah? And the other thing is, largely ethnic minorities, but also poor people, but mainly black, like Negro, basically kids, are getting put in for marijuana possession. They're getting caught up in some kind of it's non-violent crime, but once they're in there, they get into gangs. They end up getting into killing people, fighting, getting raping people. All sorts of shit starts happening. They get made to bring drugs in. They get longer sentences. It all just spirals out of control. So you've got someone who's done nothing wrong, nothing violent, nothing anyone in England would give a shit about. The police wouldn't even bother to stop you if they knew what you were doing. And you can end up in prison or dead as a result of this. Yeah, so it's a complete travesty of justice. Now, in that whole time, he's never actually done anything. For years, he's never done anything about these disabled people getting killed, which would, and quite rightly so, should suck people in and get them, interested in him. Now, he's also, but we're going to come back to Jamie Morgan Caine in a minute because it's very important. Now, he did a book called To Make a Murderer. Again, this is all this stuff to polish him up. This is them trying to polish the turd, yeah? They've shaved his hair off. They polished that up. His head is very shiny, yeah? They're polishing him. They're trying to polish this turd, this super COINTEL turd. They're trying to polish him up so that he's fit for human consumption. But they keep fucking up because they go to a playbook and they always go along with it. Right, so they've made this book called To Make a Murderer, and it's all about how this guy was completely wrongly accused and fitted up in America. Now, of course, because he's in England, they want to make it in America because then it's always hard to check. Like with Bill Baloney, yeah? Won an American Film Award. The people at the American Film Award had never heard him. If that was a England Film Award in, say, Birmingham, everybody would know. They'd phone up and say, "Oh, that guy who won the film award. Why don't you get him on and promote him. You see what I mean? But because it's in New York in America, that didn't happen. But people did check, and he of course, there was no award. It's made up, yeah? Or he didn't get it anyway. They had never heard of him. Right, so that happened. It's a similar type of thing. Then you've got this thing with him so he's saying this to make a murderer. And lots of people critiqued this book, found masses and masses of holes in it, which he was actually very receptive to. Again, this is all to give him credibility. So even when he's actually got things completely wrong with no evidence, and he says he's researched it for years, probably didn't even write it. That's probably why I admitted he didn't know, because he probably didn't know. That's also possibly part of the trick. Because if you are denying something and say, I didn't know, and you actually didn't know, then you could pass a polygraph test. Just like when that Richard Hyatt guy, no, I don't know what his name is, somebody Hyatt went on Richard D. Hall's show, and he starts saying, oh, the McCann statements, his statement analysis, and he's saying the McCann statement imply deception. Well, of course it's deception, because the whole thing's made up. So the guy's actually not lying there. Then it gets more clever, and when they're asking more specific questions, he's saying, and that would appear to be that they're trying to cover up something about a girl going missing or being murdered or something bad happening to her. Yeah, they are trying to cover it up. They're trying to cover it up not having happened. So you see, quite cleverly, even with statement analysis, yeah, if you've got a binary proposition, were they doing something suspicious to do with killing her or not? Or were they doing something else suspicious because it didn't happen? Or were they completely innocent? Of course, with their demented, hell-bent drive of the McCann's handlers to make them self-incriminate themselves more than it is humanly possible for any serial killer, if they even exist, serial killer to even do, the whole thing should ring alarm bells, because nobody would self-incriminate themselves so much. Nobody would self-incriminate themselves as much as all those people who went to dinner with. If you found out they'd accidentally killed her in some kind of like dirty sex abuse type thing, right? Yeah. Then you wouldn't go, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm a doctor, I'll just cover it up. Doctors cover up for murdering patients. They don't cover up for things like leaving their children, because doctors are in that class of English people who never admit any wrongdoing ever, and they think they're above doing anything wrong. They think poor people, the peasants, do wrong things, and they're so important that they can't do something wrong by the nature of who they are. So it doesn't matter what they do, it's never wrong. That's why they're always having affairs and stuff, right? Because they don't think that there's anything wrong with it, because it can't be wrong by nature of the fact they've done it. That's their actual brainwash mindset. So anyway, if you go back to this situation, I said I digressed there, but it's actually important because this is all psychology, and this is how you can actually get this Attwood. So he's saying black people getting sent to prison as basically fucking pseudo children, yeah, uneducated, no prospects, get done for marijuana possession. They're making more money out of them in the prison than they could make on the street probably. Then you've got these disabled people being warehoused and murdered. None of this has ever come up. Right? Then you've got this book about To Make a Murderer, about this guy, not important what his name is, but it's To Make a Murderer. And it turns out that there's no real evidence to any of the stuff he's saying, which completely means he can't have possibly done it. And then in the book, he mentions the fact that this guy used to have a history of torturing animals to death and stuff. Now, the kind of people who torture animals to death are the type of people who very likely should be under inner psychological nut wards and should maybe be in prison, because they are the exact same type of people who do present a danger to everybody around them. It's one of the telltale signs, because those people are so delusional they don't see the link between, for some reason, just killing an animal because you just feel like torturing an animal or killing it for no reason. Do you see what I mean? And killing a person or something, because you've obviously got a lot more reason to kill a person than you have some innocent animal that's for no reason. You're not going to eat it. You're not going to make it into a coat or anything. You know? You see what I mean? You're much more likely to want to kill people more than them. So somebody who doesn't think there's any problem with that are many times more likely to harm people or kill people. Right. So it doesn't make sense. His story doesn't make sense, because if you found out the person was a psycho and then you're trying to make out without any evidence that he must be innocent and staking your entire career on that makes no sense. Now, there was the other thing is he went on the True Geordie podcast, right? And on that, they called him the English Wolf of Wall Street. Now, he's saying he was just an innocent drug dealer, didn't harm anyone. Right? Some nasty people got involved, but he wasn't involved in any of that. That was just incidental. Which is a very good story if like if you just stick to that, like that wasn't really part of my bag and that was just my job and I wasn't harming anyone. That makes sense. We're just defending ourselves, possibly. That makes sense. But the problem is, if you're saying you're the English Wolf of Wall Street, that's clearly just an attempt to grab lots of hits, like clickbait. But the point is, the Wolf of Wall Street was stealing people's pensions and stuff. So he's the opposite crime doer of someone who's done an innocent crime of dealing drugs, right? Completely different. So then it gets worse. He's got this guy who he calls Wild Man, right? Who's this great big guy from somewhere like, I don't know where they're from. They're from some shithole, like they're like the Wirral, not the Wirral, but like, I don't like people from around there, like Warrington or somewhere. These people are probably the lowest type of people in the UK. I'm not saying everyone there is low, but generally speaking, people from Warrington, they're just scum. They're all like inbred, they call them woolly-backs around there. They're just fucking scum. They're not from Manchester. They're not from Liverpool. They're somewhere around there in between. They speak in horrible voices. This is a very depressive hole of a place to live. There's loads of places around there. I just get it all mixed up. And they're all scumbags, inbred fucking weirdos, horrible people. They're not all, but most of them are. It's the worst place you could possibly live, pretty much, in England, Anyway, so there's this guy, and they have horrible, lazy talking, and that kind of where they just like, the way they talk is very unattractive. There's lots of other unattractive languages in England. But anyway, so he's got this guy called Wildman, who apparently was like his mate, who he got away from England and got him out there, and the two of them went to prison together, and that guy had already been to prison. He's a big lump. He's a complete drunkard, you can see. Also, like all his teeth here, they go up here, yeah? So they've clearly been sheared off from doing something. So this guy is quite clearly like, you wouldn't want to mess with the guy, you know what I mean? I mean, he's very fat and out of shape now, but a fucking coconut, fucking hell. Yeah, he's very fat and out of shape now, but at the same time, and he's always drinking on the show. He's always drinking and drinking and drinking. He's clearly, and he's got those eyes that you can tell he's just a bit of a nutter, yeah? But anyway, that doesn't really mean anything. He's actually quite charming, seems like quite an affable guy. But the thing is, he's also talking about things like, oh, when I was in England, he used to just rob people if he wanted stuff and stuff like this. So he's not actually a good guy who just happened to be dealing drugs. So therefore, the fact that Attwood said he was friends with him since secondary school, where they went, about halfway through secondary school, was the impression I gave, that they started hanging around together. It doesn't really make sense, because if he's saying, I'm just some nice guy, blah, 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 he just happens to be my mate. If someone's going around robbing people and beating people up and breaking their bones and stuff when they're at school age, just for no reason whatsoever, but then he also tones it with saying, oh, well, like bouncers, I didn't used to like bouncers because they wouldn't let me in places and stuff like that, and they was trying to lord it over you. Now, everyone can associate with that. Lots of people love beating bouncers up because they're just often just complete scum, and they have this aloof attitude that they're better than you and they're just some scum. You know what I mean? And they think they're better than you. Everyone can associate that, but then they mix this other bit in about how he just went around robbing people and stuff like that, and he admits this like as though it's all just a bit of a laugh, and it's no, they're not the same. Then, like I'm saying, this guy, oh, he never murdered anyone. We can absolutely prove it. No proof that he didn't do it. And no proof that there wasn't any proof. It's all completely full of holes. And then it turns out he liked hurting animals. And there's various other things about this guy. I can't really remember. But the thing is, the story doesn't... This is not the kind of story some good Samaritan's going to pick up and run with when they start finding out, well, it actually looks like he is a fucking evil psycho. So, do you know what I mean? Why would I want to waste my time trying to get him out of prison? He probably deserves to be in prison and should... Or, sorry, not deserves. Because depending on your view of what a psycho is. Do they deserve it, or they just happen to have that proclivity and they can't help it? So, they've got undeveloped frontal lobe or something. Anyway, or, temporal lobe epilepsy or these kind of things. Should the person be put in a mental asylum because they're completely mental, because their brain will not work properly? Or should they be let out and do whatever they want because their brain doesn't work properly? This shouldn't really be a question we're debating. But in this crazy world, this is a question we're debating. And obviously, I wouldn't defend putting people in inhumane conditions because they're completely raving mental. But at the same time, in the old days, we would just kill them. Simple as that. So, Anyway, so we go on. Then, so he was talking about how one day, Mad Woman, who is the sort of code name they're giving this wild woman, wild man's wife, I think, or girlfriend anyway. She came out to stay. And, you know, like at one stage, she was a bit of a nutter and she was always fighting and stuff, like he was. And he was saying that they'd been to some, like, because in America, you know, the way you don't get so many pubs, you get more pubs, like bars, and they've got like strippers in a lot of the ones that stay open late and stuff. I've never been to America, but I know this is how it is. So if you go out on the night out, there'll be all these dancers and stuff. Whereas in England, people, you get it, but it's not really, it's something you'd have to sort of look for. It's not normal, you know. Anyway, in America, it's all a little bit more seedy and pervy, and you're paying for like just to look at someone walking about. I mean, it's still a bit fucked up. Anyway, and you're not allowed to shag them or anything. I mean, I know you can, but you're not. That's not actually part of it. So it's all a bit. You're going to pay to just look at someone walking about, and then go back the next day and pay them some more money. And then, you know, when does the novelty wear off that? Very fast, I would say. But they're a bit weird. So they obviously think about things differently. But anyway, they were saying that they would always have drugs around the places they would stay. They get these women round, and that these two women either in a state of undress or completely naked on the bed, and they were just all doing drugs on the bed. And this wild woman came in, and she just beat the shit out of these two women. And he's going, yeah, it was really funny. Now, no, it's not funny. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It's not funny at all. So this guy keeps slipping. He has no fucking morals. He's actually very poor. When you actually look, because he drops the ball a lot, yeah? He's not got any morals. Right, now, we're going to move on. Back to Jamie Morgan Cain, the absolute, total and utter bullshitter, right? So, this guy got picked up by someone called Don Shibley, right? Don Shibley is an ex-Navy SEAL from right at the start of when Navy SEALs came into operation. And he was also heavily involved with training Navy SEALs and putting them through selection. And this Don Shibley has got this thing called stolen valor. Now, he didn't invent it, but what it is people faking their veterans. I think it's called the VB or something, the veterans something. It's the Veterans kind of association. And if you can trick them into thinking you've got medals for valor and this and that, it affects your military pension. And there's people who will go to great lengths, sometimes just to get money, but often it's to also trick other people into thinking that they've got like a previous past. So, for instance, there's one guy who'd been lying about being a Navy SEAL, and then the guy who discovered it then, who got someone to contact him, then said, but what about his engineering degree? Do you think he could have also faked that? And he was like, of course he's faked that. It's much more hard to fake that you're a Navy SEAL for years and years and years than that you've got an engineering degree. You know what I mean? So, of course it would be fake. So these people are faking everything, and they're just scammers. And anyway, this thing's called stolen valor. Now, this Jamie Morgan Cain was talking so much shit, I watched the whole thing. I didn't watch it all in one go. There's maybe 6 hours of him talking to this guy. And he's going on about this thing, all these things that he did, and how like he went into this prison and there's a big gang and he just beat them all up. And then he went there and there's the Aryan Brotherhood, he beat them all up. And then there was a black guerrilla family, he just beat them all up. And then there's these other ones and he said, oh, come on, I'll just beat you all up. And then he beat them all up. It's just absolute fucking nonsense, right? Absolute nonsense. He wouldn't be beating anybody up. This guy's a complete fucking liar, 100%. It's just, there's no question anyone would believe his stories. So this was a big faux pas getting this guy on. But anyway, he'd also said he'd been in the military, and guess what? He was the super duper soldier going around doing all this stuff. Complete lies. So this guy, this Shibley's got fucking really angry. And literally the entire military establishment of America said this guy's the biggest bullshitter in the history of bullshit. And they've got all the military are phoning up or whatever, getting a hold of this Attwood, saying, look, this guy's trying to raise money for this Jamie Morgan Cain. Can't even fucking get where he lived right. The story behind it, let alone prove, because he actually was born in America. So all that stuff about him coming from the Isle of Man is complete lies. Right? And he was guilty of the crime he did, and was involved with poisoning this guy with his friend who he said he didn't like, and actually was just coming around the house and intimidating him, and then his wife poisoned him, the guy's wife poisoned him, and he didn't know anything about it. All complete lies. That's why he did so long in prison. And he could have got the death penalty or something, yeah? But anyway, the point is that he was trying to get a GoFundMe going for the guy. But the thing is that Then what this Shaun Attwood does is he sort of comes on. This is when he started doing his like less interview focused stuff and more like him just talking. And he'd be there going, oh, you know, there's been so much stuff going on. Oh, I don't know. It's so difficult doing all this stuff. I'm getting attacked at all angles. And he's talking all like this. And then he's saying about all these people keep harassing me and all this stuff. And it's really, really stressful and making threats and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, what? And you're an ecstasy kingpin and you give a fuck about any of that nonsense about other Americans who've never even got a passport, wouldn't even know how to get to England. Don't be so fucking stupid. And then he's saying that illegal entities and the police have been involved, but I'd never involve the police because, of course, I'd never trust the police. So he's giving all this bullshit about the police and how he would never actually be involved with the police, right? But then some legal entity, which won't say what it is, and he's had to spend loads of money on legal entities, but he wouldn't tell the police, but he would tell. So if it's a threat, you'd go to the police, wouldn't you? And the legal entity would make sure you went to the police because that's part of the process, or they go to the police with you. So he's talking all this shit. And the next thing, this John Shibley's videos have all been taken down. The guy is completely, obviously, a COINTELPRO. And then the other thing that we know is that there'd be lots of other things you could point at. Like he gets these bullshitters on who start talking about, oh, I was a ex-Cray enforcer. And then he got John Wedger on, who's also interviewed this complete bullshitter. I don't even know what his name is. It's not even important. And he goes, I'm an enforcer of the crazy now. I believe in God. Yeah, I just believe in God. And like, oh, yeah, Jesus. No. Guy doesn't even believe his own story enough to be able to tell a fucking proper bullshit story. It's absolute bullshit. And he's constantly reinforcing state narrative stories. Like he had this guy called Pepsi Watson on. And he was saying, oh yeah, this guy came in and he was some kind of alleged child murderer. And he said when he came in, we were just like thinking, yeah, he's a new Ian Huntley. Like lots of people know Ian Huntley didn't do anything wrong or seriously question that story because it was pushed out so much that it was like Madeleine McCann-esque. You know, he killed these children, then he hid the bodies, then put burning football kits in the bin and then didn't burn them to pieces. Why would you burn a football kit partly and put it in your own bin? I mean, and then they searched the places he might have hidden the bodies. And then he put them back in the places they'd already searched. Shut up, it's bullshit, right? And loads of other things, including the Madeleine McCann story. And now he's going for all this fucking Epstein bollocks. Epstein. The pedo prince, Prince Andrew, right? Yeah, who's allegedly had sex with a 17-year-old in the British Virgin Islands. Well, what's the age of consent in the British Virgin Isles? 16, so it's not even illegal. So how she can be sex trafficked when she's above the age of consent? The story is to put out there for the pleb to eat the Jewish poison, fucking completely confuse them, corrupt their brain and start panicking about something, which is all complete bullshit. And I guarantee you, Prince Andrew has so little respect for you, he's just gone along with it. He thought, I don't give a fuck what the peasants think. They're just brain dead. I don't care. He doesn't care. He's in on it. That's why he's not said anything, because if he says things, he doesn't want to get into a debate about it. He just wants to keep the whole thing buzzing around, and people go, oh yeah, he's going to have to say something soon. Yeah, all the plebs, all the peasants saying this. Anyway, that's what I think about Attwood. James English, the one who had the guy called Naked Martin, who ate a poo sandwich. Yeah. And he said, it's nothing to do with me being gay. That's got nothing to do with it. Also, I'm a naturist. That's got nothing to do with any of the things I do on here. And somebody tried to get me to eat my own sick. Now, that's just disgusting when you've just done a shit and then eaten that in a sandwich. The guy is fucking sick. They're a load of fucking sickos. They've got a very strong interest in anything to do with paedophiles. They're just anything that comes to do with what they call paedophiles, because, of course, having sex with a 17-year-old isn't being a paedophile in the British Virgin Islands, at least. Constantly going on about it because they're implanting that in your mind, because that's what they're interested in. This constant going on about paedophiles all the time, anyone who's doing it, I mean, a lot of people might say, well, you do. Well, I actually don't. I just mention that they're doing it. And why are they all doing it? Because it's all to fuck with your head. Yeah? That's what it's doing. Okay, right, so my name's Tom Cahill. It's Friday, the 1st of October, 2019. Let me know what you think about this. Listen, there's going to be a lot more stuff about this Attwood, James English and True Geordie podcast, because these three bunch of cunts, like, they're all fucked. James English is probably somewhere in the middle of intelligence. Attwood's more intelligent, and that fucking big fat fucking Geordie's as thick as fuck. But And he loves himself. He's got tattoos all over, and he's really big. But he couldn't fight. He couldn't peel the skin off the top of a rice pudding that come. Yeah, you just know he's fake. He cries fake out to you. Anyway, let me know what you think. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.